Mm, okay, that's done. That's done. Fantastic. Let's see. Mm, mm. All right, so we're gonna get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Sean, otherwise known as Ellen Shaw, otherwise known as Command Dollar. It's been a very, very long time since we have done anything social media related. Um, so we started back off in 2013 or 2014, back when I was still in college, when, college kids are very, very affluent and have a lot of money, which isn't a real thing. I was dirt poor. So I love Magic. I love Commander. Just recently gotten into it. And I was just like, well, I love this game, but I can't afford it. So let me see if I can find a way to enjoy it while not spending a lot of money. So I started doing a little bit of research. Mind you, this is 6-7 years ago at least, so the game was completely different. It was almost brand new to the scene. Everyone was still learning and trying to figure out what was going on. But I started doing a lot of research on cards, and eventually I started coming up with cards that were kind of okay. I mean, they're not top tier cards, they're not fantastic cards, but they could easily find their way into different decks or really swing the game. And it kind of just evolved from there. I started a Tumblr blog, started writing articles, showing cards that were really fantastic, that could function on a budget of like $1 or less, or like somewhat of a more realistic spending curve. And we ran that for about 3-4 years maybe. We definitely had a peak where we had hundreds and thousands of followers. We had hundreds and thousands of people reblogging our material on Tumblr. We had grand plans to expand to our YouTube, see if I could go further, and just kind of died out because life happens. All of us started growing older. We got out of college. We moved on to the lives we were living. I kept on moving everywhere and under the sun. Started out in New Jersey, lived in New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, currently out in Idaho. Was going to try and get out to Washington, but then the apocalypse had to start. So here we are. Obviously, this is a great opportunity to start talking about Magic, because with the way that COVID-19 is changing the way that we play the game, or the capacity to play the game, it's not exactly easy to get together with friends anymore. So I figured I'd start our YouTube channel up again to see if I can gather some interest and really get things going. So today we're going to be talking about one deck that I had recently built in the last couple months. It was a real work in progress to try and figure out the strategy for this deck, learn what works, what doesn't work, the ups and downs of it, and really just get it going. I'm going to turn on the light here just 1 second, see if that changed anything. Oh, that makes a ton of difference. Perfect. So the deck is a mono black Sidisi Undead Vizier deck. Now, Sidisi basically says once you ETBs, you exploit. Exploit, sack a creature, you get a bonus ability. It's a May ability too, which is really good, so you don't have to do it. It's just, oh, hey, I need a creature, boom, I don't need to exploit it. She's 3 and 2 black, she's a 4/6 Death Touch with exploit. That says when she enters the battlefield, if she exploits, you can tutor for a card in your deck and put it in your hand, and then shuffle your library, of course. Now that's extremely powerful in Commander. Having a guaranteed tutor in a format that's singleton and 100 cards, like, amazing, absolutely amazing. But the title of this video is Maximum Effort. And the reason I said maximum effort on this is because, going with our wonderful theme of budget, not all of us have the capability to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on this game. You know, we have real life expectations, we have a budget that we need to stick to. Some of us just get along by trading, you know, occasionally opening things that are on packs, you know, what have you. But we do have some of those cards that are really fantastic, really good, really knocking out in the games. And the idea behind maximum effort is to, you know, find a handful of cards, a group of cards that can fit within a deck and can completely change the way the deck works and completely change the way the game functions. Now, we're going to be going over a couple of cards in this deck. I'm going to link the tapped out list to this deck below in just a hot moment. For those who are interested and want to learn about the deck, I believe it costs, or is rather valued at, somewhere around $200. Yeah, which for a Commander deck is not unrealistic. You know, I've seen decks that are $50 value, $100 value, $150 value. But on the flip side, there are people with $1,000+ value decks. I myself have a Kozilek colorless Commander deck that is worth anywhere from $700 to $800, which is pretty not bad. But this deck is about $200 in value. Now, one of the wonderful things about having a monocolor deck, obviously, is the land base. You can save tons of money on the land base if it's monocolor, because all you have to do is run basics for the most part. So in this deck, the amount of basics, let's see, I have 25 swamps. Then we have a Barren Moor, a Bojuka Bog, a Cabal Stronghold, a Command Tower, Evolving Wilds, Mortuary Mire, a Terrain Generator, a Terramorphic Expanse, and a Witch's Cottage. They're all what you call utility lands, trying to help you, you know, get to where you're going. And we'll get to why some of those lands are utility lands in a moment. Now, one of the crazy things that you're going to see is if you look at the creature base. There are 39 creatures in this deck. And the overwhelming majority of them are 1-drops. They cost 1 black just to cast. And with that, we're going to show you the exact reason why if you look over in the artifact section. In the artifacts, the very, very first artifact that you will find, and let's see if I can find it real quick here in the deck itself. It's not that. Ah, here we go. One of the biggest keys to this deck's function and success, Bolas's Citadel. Now, on Tapped Out, they have Bolas's Citadel list out for about $3. That's a pretty fair price. That's a pretty decent card for what it does, especially in Commander. So for those who are not familiar with it, or haven't encountered it yet before, basically says for 3 colorless and 3 black, you may look at the top card of your library at any time. That's pretty sweet. That's a pretty nice bonus. You may play the top card of your library. If you cast a spell this way, you can pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than pay its mana cost. And its final ability, which sometimes can be a game winner, is to tap it, sacrifice 10 non-land permanents, and then each opponent loses 10 life. Now, if you're starting to put the pieces together, that's great. But for those who haven't really picked up on the strategy yet, you're going to really enjoy this. So with all those drops in that deck, here's the basic theme of the deck. Shuffle up, everyone cuts the deck, you draw your first 7. When you look at your opening hand, you want to have at least 2 to 3 lands, maybe 1, 2 creatures, maybe a draw spell, but the lands are the most important part. Now, if you get an opening hand that's 7 lands, sweet, that's unbelievable in this deck. That's great. Keep it. Snap keep. Because your whole goal, by turn 5 or sooner, you want to cast this wonderful Sidisi. And then by turn 6 or sooner, you want to cast Bolas' Citadel. Now, by that time, people are starting to build their board states. They're starting to really figure out what's going on in the game, starting to do their counters and whatnot. But they're going to be like, oh, hey, Bolas' Citadel, he has nothing else on field? Sure, let him have it. He's doing terrible. And that's where they make the biggest mistake. When you start dropping one creature, no big deal. One life, whatever. Another creature, another one life, no big deal. Yeah. Then another, and then another, and then another. And then all of a sudden they start to see, hey, this is not good. This is bad. This is terrible. And that's when they start to pick up on things. So the title of this deck is Mono Black Sidisi Storm. The concept, you cast Sidisi, you get your Bolas' Citadel, you cast your Bolas' Citadel, and then basically you cast every creature in your whole deck and you win. Now, it's not just cast, win, because obviously you have a certain life total that you need to be concerned about. And there are a couple cards that can actually help you balance that out. If I can find them all here. Maybe I should have put them out, but whatever. It's nice to kind of go through a deck, shuffle up after so many times of not being able to get there. Because I don't know about you, but with this wonderful coronavirus going around, the ability to go to Commander Leagues, play Paper Magic with friends, has drastically reduced from at least once or twice a week to a whopping 0. Oh, this one. There's that. There's that. Perfect. All right. So we're going to go over a couple cards that make this deck go from good to great, if you've ever read that book. And we're going to start off with the 2 cards that help you filter through your deck with relative ease. So you cast Sidisi turn 5 or sooner, and then you cast Bolas' Citadel turn 6 or sooner. What if your top deck is a land, and you play the land for that turn? Then you're screwed. You can't do anything. You have to pass the turn. But fortunately, there are a couple cards that help you out with that. They're definitely not budget cards, so it's not a high recommendation if you don't have these. But if you have them, you're not using them, or you're using them in decks and they're not the super most efficient thing in the world, they can drastically change how you play this game. The cheaper one of the two, Necropotence. Now, the goal of this deck is when you cast Bolas' Citadel, ideally that's the turn that you end the game, that you win. So you're not exactly concerned with taking your next turn. With Necropotence on the field, that really helps you out. So say, for example, your Sidisi, you get your Bolas' Citadel, you get your Bolas' Citadel out, top deck's a land, but you have Necropotence out. Fantastic. You pay 1 life, toss it to the exile, and then you get to look at the top one. But for those who are not exactly the most familiar with Necropotence, it's a 3-black enchantment, as in black, says skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. But you can also pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library face down, put that card into your hand at the beginning of your next end step. Now, like I said, your goal is not to get to the next end step. Your goal is to kill everyone before your end step even happens. So if you have that land on the top of your deck, just pay 1 life, get rid of it, and you're ready to go. There's also another means to deal with that. The more expensive version, which wonderfully I had store credit at my local game store and I utilized, Sensei's Divining Top. A lot of you may know this card. For those who don't, it's a 1-drop artifact. For 1 mana of any color, you can look at the top 3 cards of your library and put them back in any order. Pretty powerful already. But additionally, you can tap it, you draw a card, and then you put Sensei's Divining Top on top of your deck. Now, with Bolas' Citadel out in the field, you're basically going to put the Sensei's Top back on top of your deck. Be like, oh hey, it's Sensei's Divining Top. I'll pay 1 life and cast Sensei's Top. You keep on doing it. Now, I know the question that you're asking. How are you going to manage to kill everyone when you're killing yourself with Bolas' Citadel? Because every time you cast something, it's going to take the life directly from you. That's a great question. Now, the wonderful thing about Black is that it really doesn't care about, sacrificing a bunch of life in order to get where it needs to go. And there are a couple cards that drastically help that change. First one, the most budget acquisition, Prism Ring. It's a 1-drop artifact that says, as it enters the battlefield, you choose a color. And whenever you cast a spell of that chosen color, you gain a life. Pretty sweet in this deck, because most of your cards, most of your creatures, are 1-drops. So you pay 1 life, boom, drop a 1-drop creature. Prism Ring on the field, hey, it's a black creature, you gain a life. So you net 0, you stay exactly where you're at. Now, that's 1 card in 99. It's not exactly going to help. So the next card, it's a legendary artifact that costs 3 of any color. It says black creature spells you cast cost 1 color or 1 of any color less to cast. Whenever you cast a creature spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Pretty sweet. Both of them out in the field, now you're netting 1 every time you cast a creature. You do technically lose the life though. So if somebody has an Erebos or a Tainted Remedy out, that's really going to cause you trouble. But we'll get into that later. The final pieces of life gain, we'll go through the 3. 2 of the more bigger ones, and then the piece de resistance, if you will. Falkenrath Noble. There's a bunch of versions of this card within the game. There's Falkenrath Noble, there's Blood Artist. I know there's one that recently came out in the most recent Ravnica set, but they all basically do the same thing. Falkenrath Noble is just a little bigger. For 3 of any color and a black, it's a 2/2 flyer that says whenever Falkenrath Noble or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. In this deck, you're going to have a lot of creatures potentially dying in order to filter through your deck, find what you need, and get that win. So he's going to be a powerhouse on the field. The next, Sanguine Bond. Now, as you notice, Falkenrath Noble and Sanguine Bond are both definitively not 1-drops. If they were, they'd be powerful, and they'd probably have a couple zeros behind their numbers. But if you have to pay 5 life to get a Sanguine Bond out, it's going to do a lot of good for you. Because for a 5-drop enchantment, it says whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So every time you gain life, let's say you have a Bantu's Monument and a Prism Ring out, right? You cast a 1-drop creature. Prism Ring gains you a life. Because of Sanguine Bond, that opponent will lose that much life. You also have the Bantu's Monument out. So you'll gain 2 life, I believe. No, you'll gain 1 life, and your opponent will lose 2 life. So just for casting 1 creature, with those 3 out, the Prism Ring, the Bantu's Monument, and the Sanguine Bond, your opponent will lose 1, and you will gain 2. Pretty sweet deal. Now, with the idea of this Storm deck, you're going to keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. And eventually, you're going to have a lot of creatures out in the field, a lot of black mana symbols, which is going to be great for, you guessed it, the Grey Merchant of Asphodel. The guy who just came back into Standard and is wrecking everything. For those who have not encountered this terror yet, he says for 3 and 2 black for a 2/4, when he enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black, devotion being the number of black mana symbols on your side of the field, and then you will gain life equal to the life lost this way. So even if you had 10 black mana symbols on the field, you cast this guy because he has 2 extra, boom. Each opponent loses 12 life, and you gain 12 life for each opponent you have. Pretty sweet deal. Very sweet deal. Now, we've covered life gain. We've covered filtering through your deck to an extent. Because like I said, a lot of your creatures are going to be dying in this deck. You're going to be sacrificing them to get to that final win. You know, typical black stratagem. And the other two cards that can help you filter through your deck when a creature dies. This is a wonderful bit from Magic Origins, Shadows of the Past. When I saw this card, when I pulled this card in, a pre-release, I was blown away with how powerful it was for how cheap it was. For 1 and a black, an enchantment says, whenever a creature dies, not whenever your creature dies, whenever a creature dies, scry 1. That's obscenely powerful. That's turn 2, you drop that, creature's dying, boom, 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 boom. You're going to filter through your deck like no tomorrow. It also has a second ability. For 4 and a black, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, but you can only activate this ability if there are 4 or more creature cards in your graveyard. Have I ever needed to activate with this deck? No. But would I be able to? Easily. And then, there's Ward Eye Witch. It says, whenever Ward Eye Witch or another creature I control dies, so it's specific to me, scry 1. So with both of those out, you sack a creature, you get to scry 2. Sweet! And it just keeps getting better from there. I'm going to pull out a couple more cards that really help the deck focus and filter through and get you that win. There we go. Yeah, we'll stick with that for now. So, I have 6 more cards, I want to show you. Another one of the cards in the same category as Falkenrath Noble, Zulaport Cutthroat. Very similar effect. Whenever it or another creature I control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and I gain 1. Pretty straightforward. But the more effects that we have in this deck, the better. Because, 1 life, no big deal. 2 life, no big deal. But all of a sudden, when you're losing 3 life every time one of my creatures dies, and I'm going to be killing 20 creatures in my turn, I'm going to be getting a lot of life. But here's the thing. You've got to be able to kill your creatures, right? Never rely on combat with this deck. Never once. Not even remotely. Instead, sacrifice the creatures yourself. With cards like Carrion Feeder, which can't block, but you can sacrifice a creature at any time and put a +1/+1 counter on it. I don't really care about the +1/+1 counters. I worry about getting rid of my creatures because they're more value to me dead than alive sometimes. And the second one, Viscera Seer. Now, when I looked this card up, because I was trying to find one, and I only had one in another deck, I was shocked at how expensive this was. This is definitely not a budget common card anymore. But its value can be undeniable. Sacrifice a creature, scry 1 for 1 drop in black. Absolutely phenomenal. Now I've got 2 more cards that I want to show you that are definitely budget, and then 1 card that I pulled very recently that I was very excited that I pulled. Definitely not a budget acquisition in any capacity for a lot of people. But if you have one laying around and you haven't quite figured out how to use it yet, here's a good idea. So, with all your creatures dying, you're going to be gaining a lot of life. But with Deathgreeter, it says whenever another creature is put into a graveyard from play, and it says another creature, not another creature you control. So it's any creature on the battlefield. You gain 1 life. Sweet. This includes your creatures, this includes your opponent's creatures, this includes their tokens, because they technically do hit the graveyard. And it's going to be phenomenal because you're just going to be gaining life. And because of Bolas of Citadel, you're going to be losing a little bit of life, but you're not going to notice it. Second card, Dread Return. Now, the great combo is with Dread Return and Gary. Gary being Grey Merchant of Asheville. For 2 and 2 black, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's a sorcery speed, so you can't do an instant. No big deal. Like I said, by the time you've got Bolas of Citadel, you should be attempting to win the game at this point, so that will work in your favor. Dread Return also has a flashback cost. Flashback being you can play this card again from your graveyard, then exile. The flashback is to sack 3 creatures. Oh no, 3 more creatures. Big whoop. When you make your opponent lose, 12, 11, 10, 9, 21 life in 1 turn, they're going to notice. It's going to be phenomenal for you, not for them. And then let's go over the final card that was a recent acquisition. I literally opened a pack, pulled it, and I was like, I know exactly where to put this. Thrawn, Yawgmoth Physician. Or Yawgmoth, Thrawn Physician. Can't read backwards. So he's 2 and 2 black, a 2/4, protection from humans. But here's the part that's more interesting. Pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature, and draw a card. Now he also has for 2 black and discard a card, proliferate, but we're not dealing poison damage. We're not trying to kill him by anything other than life lost. So there's that. And that is the core fundamental of the deck. Now, pros and cons of this deck are as follows. Pros. It can be technically competitive. It can be very straightforward. It can be very easy to play. So long as you know what the basic strategy of the deck is, cool. Sit down, shuffle up, draw 7, go with it. It's also relatively easy to build. There are some higher budget acquisition cards, but that's part of the whole maximum effort thing, where when you are buying cards or you are trading for cards, you're getting store credit and then you're getting cards. Any way that you would want to be looking for cards, you're looking for those cards that have the maximum value that you can put in all different decks. So that way, if you decide 6 months down the road, hey, I really don't like this deck, I'm going to disassemble it, but hey, there are these cards that I can really filter into other decks and make them even better. And one of those cards is definitively Sensei's Divining Top. Now, last I checked, Sensei's Top is obscenely expensive. It's like $30, $40 or something like that. Not exactly a budget acquisition, but if you have one, or if you have the capacity to get one, it's only going to do you good in the long run. So that's a pro as well. For this whole deck, if you want to build it from top to bottom, it would cost you, according to Card Kingdom, anywhere from $194 to $208, which is, for a commander deck, not terrible. I believe that Tapped Out has also rated this as a 65% competitive, 35% casual deck, and I haven't put any input on it, so it's just what they saw and what they rated it as, which is great. It can be casual, it can be competitive, but it is extremely straightforward. I'm going to kill you on turn 6 or sooner. Stop me. Cons of this, however, are very, very unbalanced. If for some reason Bolas' Citadel gets exiled, your strategy is essentially over, because it very much relies on it. If you go turn 5 Sidisi and somebody's like, counter, that's going to be rough if you don't already have access to Bolas' Citadel. Then you have to wait till turn 7, or if you have it in hand, turn 6, or if you draw turn 6, whatever. But if somebody exiles Bolas' Citadel, the whole strategy of the deck, kaput. So you really have to find ways to protect Bolas' Citadel. I do have a couple in this deck. Let me see if I can find them real quick. But they focus mainly and only, around the ability to retrieve it from the graveyard. Because that is the one and true test. Because if, like I said, it gets exiled, your game is over. You're playing solitaire at that point. Draw a card, pass, wait for the game to end. So coincidentally, all 3 cards that are meant to protect and help you get back Bolas' Citadel are artifacts. So we've got Little Old Mere Retriever. It says when it's put into a graveyard from play, you can return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Guess what you're getting? Next, good old classic Elixir of Immortality. 2 taps, you gain 5 life, which might be necessary at that point because people realize what you're doing. You shuffle this and your graveyard into your library. Seems that my parents-in-law were calling my wife. Third, and finally, Wand Vertebrae. I saw this card, thought it was great, but it's a very niche card. And you would be activating the second ability for 2-tap Exile Wand of Vertebra. Shuffle up to 5 target cards from your graveyard into your library. Hey, I did a good job reading that backwards. So those are all plan Bs. I mean, if you draw your opening hand of 7 cards and 6 of them are lands and one of them is one of those cards, sweet, awesome, done. I would keep that hand in a second. But with this deck, you've got to be very careful, as with every other deck, about what hand you keep. Obviously, having 2 or more lands is definitely a must. There are a number of cards that are specifically in there just to draw. There are 1, maybe 2 tutors in there, which are very useful. But with your opening hand, you look at it, and you've got to seriously consider, will I be able to get to turn 5 Sidisi on turn 5? If the answer is, I don't think so, or possibly it'd be a stretch, take a mulligan. But if you have 3 lands, draw a spell, a tutor, if your hand is stacked to have 5 lands on turn 5, take it, keep it, no matter what. Because in 5 turns, the likelihood of you drawing another land, so that way you can turn 6, plop a land, drop down your Bolas' Citadel, and then get the engine rolling. Fantastic. So that's the basic premise of the deck. If you do have any other questions, comments, or concerns, you can leave them in the comments. Obviously, everyone's going to be very attentive with these days. I do also want to take a moment, thank everyone who takes a moment to watch this video. Hope you're doing well. Hope your quarantine is going well. Hope everyone's washing your hands, that you're practicing social distancing. I know it's a tough time for us Magic players because we want to meet in person. We want to shuffle up. We want to play a good number of games, even though, each game lasts an hour or 6. But, trying to flatten that curve is definitely important so that way we can get back to playing that game. Because I know I have a couple friends who are in the Commander, world, but, if they were affected by this coronavirus, this COVID-19, it would drastically affect their lives and it might hospitalize them. So please, by all means, continue to practice your social distancing. I wish you the best of luck. You can reach out and talk to me or any of the other Command Dollar folks. But until then, keep building.